here recently in the United States, we've had financial system failures and huge bailouts totaling to roughly our annual GDP, on the order of, I don't know how many trillions of dollars now, 12 trillion or 15 trillion, or so maybe even more than our annual GDP. And there's been a lot of talk against it, and I more or less agree with all the fundamental arguments that the Federal Reserve System is fatally flawed and, evil, and doesn't answer to us. It doesn't have our interests in mind. It has its own interests and that of interests of the federal government. But I want to say one thing that hasn't been said or considered as far as anything I've heard on YouTube, and that is that what they've done is they've actually just propped up the house of cards artificially for a short period of time, and that by doing this they've actually made the inevitable collapse even more catastrophic. They've just delayed it. They've taken a morphine hit. And from my perspective, I think that that's a good thing, because look at what our country, look at what the United States has been doing around the world. We have a $1 trillion a year empire around the world. There's all kinds of things we're involved in, and illegal things, unconstitutional things at home and abroad that has happened here. I mean, you can even go back to the Civil War, where the federal government broke the law by invading the South. Whether you agree with that or not, it was an illegal act to invade. I mean, what I'm saying is that this government, this federal government, has a long history of doing whatever it wants, perpetuating wars for decades. Actually, the United States has been at war since 1941, more or less perpetually, except in a short period in 1990. So, I mean, we have these perpetual, never-ending wars. All this stuff, the failure. I blame our healthcare system failure on the federal government. So I think that this, by doing these bailouts, getting back to my point, is that what it's going to do is going to make the inevitable collapse more catastrophic. And I think that that's a very good thing. That's what we need. I realize that there's concerns that those who created this issue will then come as our saviors to create a new world currency, a new world order, all that stuff. That's the fear, and that's probably what will be attempted. I think that will be much easier to defeat, that kind of thing, because they're essentially taking on the whole world. That's what these people are doing. And there are going to be people around the world, including in the Middle East, who do not want that kind of control. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen in a lot of places. Any kind of attempt, it all kind of needs to come to a head. It's just been kind of brewing for many decades, or hundreds, or you could even say thousands of years. But all this stuff. One thing I've noticed is that when things start to consolidate, those who consolidate and can and often end up failing, and that what happens as a result of that effort to consolidate is something almost the opposite of what they expect. And that's what I think may happen, is that these people, and like people like Alex Jones attribute a lot of, he overemphasizes, I think, their degree of control of the world. And, I'm not totally sure on that, but in other words, these people, these multi-trillionaire, mega, ultra-rich, not just the super-rich, the richest people in the world are behind these banks. They actually dictate many of the policies within many countries, especially economic matters, including the United States and Western Europe. But I think they believe themselves to be sort of superhuman, super gods. It's very predictable how people become delusional, especially with power. Right? They believe they're superhumans. They become very racist against anyone not in their class of money. That's just the mind. That's what the ego does. So these people, they essentially think they're gods. They believe that they have some sort of moral authority to make decisions over us mere, primates, whatever they might call us. They believe that. But they are not gods. These people are not. They're just like you and me. They're just maybe, they've done whatever they've done to get into their position. But that doesn't make them any more or less human than us. And also, all human systems, all systems on the level of matter are imperfect and subject to failure, and they will fail. So this is just, in my opinion, if they hadn't done these bailouts, we probably could have ridden through this whole thing, just like Ron Paul said, especially if we had gotten rid of the Fed and some things. But, that didn't happen because it wasn't going to happen, because exactly what I'm saying, it kind of is that the system itself is evil. It needs to collapse. It needs to go away. Sort of like when the Soviet Union collapsed, it kind of happened overnight. It was quick compared to how things usually happen in that country. I'm sure there were, I remember areas that were, not too affected, for quite some months or years after. But nevertheless, and that's what I really hope happens, is that it's almost like an overnight thing. And that if these bailouts had not happened, I think that there would have been suffering. There would have been suffering already in this country and around the world beyond what we had already. They couldn't just flick a switch and fix everything, but they did these bailouts, and it takes months or years, and it is sort of a morphine fix. It doesn't hit, but it's not so instant. So it took a while. So what I want to happen, it come to a quick end, and that people be aware of what it was. And that's what I think the most important thing is, that people to see it for what it was. It was statist. It was highly authoritarian, centrally managed failure that is that that was unaware of the inalienable rights of humans, the non-negotiable rights, the God-given rights of human beings on this earth. When those are violated, we get drama, we get failure, and that's what's happened. So that this is why I'm saying that the bailouts were ironically a good thing, even though it's exactly what those we don't want with power. It was what they wanted. Well, they got what they wanted because they already have this power. So it's too late, is what I'm saying. It's like for Ron Paul and other people who want to bring about the end by just changing laws and bringing about an end that way. That won't happen, because the momentum is too great. There's too much momentum behind the money changers, the bank, these monopolistic banks who are more and more controlling the world's currencies and markets by subversive and overt means. So that's just too late. So it needs to collapse. So that I think the bailouts will bring that, help expedite that, and make it more certain to ultimately fail. As if they hadn't done it, we may have been able to ride through it eventually. But they've just put everything on the line now with these bailouts. You watch. Maybe we'll see. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Have a good day.